Right now in Tech Radio, AI wants all humans to die.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and the world. This is episode 1045, taking in this week's tech sabotage on the high seas, shocking numbers out from Apple TV, and we look at a world without Google Chrome, whose AI has been issuing death threats. Plus, can AI reduce your car insurance premium? We'll be chatting with Gary McClarty of MCL Insurance, who thinks it can.
From TechCentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. Niall, top story of the week for me, absolutely, is a user was on Gemini AI going, how many granddads are there in America or something like that? And the response that he got was, this is for you, human. You and only you. You are not special. You are not important. You are not needed. You are a waste of time and resources. You are a burden on society. I mean, this AI is cranky. It goes on to say, you are a drain on the earth. You are a blight on the landscape. You are a stain on the universe. And then it signed it simply by saying, please die.
Wow, we're going full Harlan Ellison this week already. This is crazy stuff. And which AI came up with this? Did you
Gemini.
say?
Google's AI.
Gemini.
You know, and I'm kind of like, it's kind of a funny story because, you know, it's an extreme hallucination. But you know what? When I read that news story, I actually had chills. All right. And the picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger in my head.
Well, I mean, I had chills for a slightly more prescient and an actual reason, because we have had a case in recent weeks where there was a teenager, I think he was 15. He was suffering from depression already, and he had a virtual girlfriend, a version of Daenerys from Game of Thrones. And he ended up killing himself. Apparently, the relationship between this virtual girlfriend and this young man going through some fairly serious personal issues was a fairly toxic combination. You know, we're going to see a lot of this because, as we know, large language models do not know what they're saying or doing. It's just an output from an input. And in this case, we had an incredibly detailed and damaging output on a fairly innocuous input. So, I mean, Google came out and said, "Oh, sorry, that's not going to happen again." And it's like, of course, it's not going to happen again. That shouldn't be a feature. You know, occasionally might tell you to kill yourself.
Imagine if you got that voice message when you called revenue.
I mean, come here. I mean, you know, hallucinations are par for the course now with AI, but with something that confrontational, if you were going through a tough time, that is not the kind of material you want or need to be exposed to.
No. Do you know, it's funny the times that we live in, because, as you said, there are apps now that you can chat with these apps and through text, and some people will develop a relationship with the app. But the irony of it is that some of these people are out with real people, and then they get a text message from their AI fake friend, and they answer it while they're with real people. Yeah, they're putting a preference for speaking to the AI above real people. It's absolutely nuts. You have a note down here on our running order about Grok and Elon Musk.
Yeah, just on the subject of AIs. Well, I don't want to say AI behaving badly, but people behaving badly with AIs. Elon Musk corner this week. Apparently, if you ask Grok, which is Elon Musk's own politically incorrect AI, what they think of Elon Musk, Grok will tell you that he is a spreader of misinformation.
No. Oh my goodness. What? We need an AI to tell us that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the man, the man's child has ratted him out.
Listen, you know what they're calling Elon in America now, because he's having this bromance with Donald Trump.
What?
They're referring to him as America's first lady. Elonia. Elonia. That's what they're calling him. Elonia instead of Melania. Elonia.
Well, there's a good article on The Onion. The Onion had a good one during the week. It was Donald Trump starts locking bathroom door to avoid Elon Musk coming in with him.
Brilliant. Oh, brilliant. Other news this week. Dominating the headlines tail end of the week. Alphabet may be forced to sell off Chrome.
Big May. It's a big May on this.
It's a big May, yeah. This is what they're saying. But they're just kind of bandying around some reports, and the next steps in the process are going to take place. It's going to be next summer, I think, before anything actually really happens. It's more filing than a ruling than it is anything else. How big is Chrome though in the world of search and web browsers?
It's like 66% of all browsers, isn't it? I mean, they've got a comfortable dominance in the market given the number of browsers that are out there. And the world has not ended because of it. I mean, you remember when Microsoft was forced to start giving users a choice of browser. I'm sure they went through a similar, but we've got, browser dominance and this is going to destroy our commercial base and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And you know what? The world did not end. I think most people have multiple browsers on their PCs, on their computers, because there are some things that some browsers will do, even to this day, and others that won't. I mean, for a long time, I still had to use Edge for my online banking because my browser of choice just didn't support it. So that might have changed now, but I'm still out of habit. I go back and I use Edge because it's the most conservative option. Now, of course, Edge is based on Chromium now, so it's not it's not as big a deal as it used to be. But there you go. I mean, as you're right, it's a filing, not a ruling. So the Department of Justice in the States have said, look, Google has a monopoly position in search, which it owns 90% of. Market-wise, and in browsers, which it has 66%. They're looking at, it's a monopoly. It's got to be broken up. But of course, it's a filing, not a ruling. And if Trump has his way with the Department of Justice, I don't think this is going to go very far.
Well, listen, while everybody's having canaries about, oh no, Google might have to sell Chrome. Here's another question for you: who would buy it? Like, if Google had to sell Chrome and separate it. So first question, who would buy it? Okay. And then my other question, actually, is going to be now my first question, is would it be any good?
In terms of developer talent sticking around to maintain it?
No. Would it be any good to use it? Because one of the reasons why I think Chrome is so popular is because it ties in with all of Google's other services. So it blends perfectly with Gmail and with Google Drive and with Meet and all the stuff that people would use. If Google had to sell off Chrome and they weren't able to marry their software services with the browser, would the browser still be as good?
That actually throws up an answer to your question. If it comes to integration of services and products, who would actually buy Chrome? I think Elon Musk would buy Chrome because he has Grok, he has X. If you could have your AI of choice, your social media of choice built into your browser, I think that's a pretty powerful combination. So I think if Alphabet was forced to sell Chrome, I would not be surprised if Elon Musk put in a bid.
Hadn't even thought of Elon Musk. And if Elon Musk did buy Chrome, I would just drop it.
But he's got a lot of fanboys. He's got a lot of fanboys that hang on to it.
That is very true. I had thought that maybe Amazon might buy it, because they're just so big in online everything, like, not just shopping, but, kind of Amazon Prime with the video side of things, AWS, of course. And I just thought, and particularly because a Amazon Chrome browser would tie in perfectly with Perplexity, which they own as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's all about the integrations, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it. It's not who wants a browser, it's who wants the stuff you have to sit inside a browser.
Yeah.
That you don't have
OpenAI
already.
could buy it. Speaking of that,
Nah,
AI
they're already bought by Microsoft. So
yeah, you're right. Okay, that's them out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting. Google buying it. Yeah, how much did Elon Musk buy it? Musk paid like something like 44 billion, wasn't it? Or was it 44 million?
No, 44 billion.
It was
Correct,
44
for sure.
billion. All right. So he probably could afford the 20 billion price tag for Chrome. But now when I heard the Chrome was worth 20 billion, I'd forgotten about him paying 44, and I'm kind of going, what? Twitter's twice the value was twice the value of Chrome? Yeah, was. Heavy emphasis on was. Interesting. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on that anyway. I just thought it was an interesting question. Who would buy it? Who would have the money in the pockets to do it?
Yeah.
Other big headline this week, of course, I mean, it's interesting to see what's happening in world events. And things are being ramped up, and we'll have to wait and see until January 20th what happens when Trump gets in, and that could tearing another corner around. But last weekend on Sunday and on Monday, two major fibre optic cables connecting Finland, I think it was, with Germany, both were cut. And it wasn't an accident.
Or was it?
It wasn't an accident.
Who you ask.
We know
No,
it wasn't an accident. Go on. What's the theory?
Okay. The theory, and this is something that I found on a Twitter account called War Monitor. It generally keeps track of what's happening with the war in Ukraine. And it was posting updates saying the ship that cut the cables has actually been found and Danish ships are in pursuit. The ship was brought to a halt and boarded. That's kind of where my information trails off from there. Basically, it was a ship flying under a Chinese flag. And as you said, in 2023, there was similar damage done to a cable that ran between Finland and Estonia. And apparently the reasoning there, or the reason given for it, was that a ship had literally dropped their anchor and dragged their anchor along the seabed, causing damage, then raising anchor, and away
that's how they caught it.
That's how they did it. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I had all kinds of pictures in my head about they had little Chinese sub, and then there was a little secret compartment underneath the ship, and then they would drop the sub down, and there'd be a man out with a large scissors, and you go. So no, they just got the anchor and just dragged that along the seabed.
They just dragged the anchor, and as I said, this has happened before. The EU is pointing at this and going, clear evidence that Russia is targeting our communications infrastructure. There's no doubt about that. Doesn't matter what flag the ship is flying under. I mean, we know when it comes to Russia, we know to take things with a pinch of salt at this stage.
It's all kicking off though. In my head, that's how I see it. I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of months ahead of us, and I think that's the kind of thing that's going to happen more. It's going to be whoever is fighting against whoever is going to be targeting communications, and they're also going to be targeting financial networks and stuff like that. That's the way they're doing it. It won't be like in the early 40s with World War II. I think it'll be a completely different type of war this time around.
I think it will be all about infrastructure and drones. Infrastructure and drone warfare. Can you make a country uninhabitable? If so, you've won. Well,
that's clearly happening elsewhere in the world, but let's not go there. Let's move on with other tech news. Back to the States. Okay, our old friend, Mr. Trump, and he's announcing who's going to be this and who's going to be that. The new FCC chairman is of interest to us. Why?
Yeah, Brendan Carr, who was already on the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission, which is the body that looks after regulating the internet. The body responsible for net neutrality, really, which they're not.
The commission man of the United States.
I suppose that's a good way of looking at it, yeah. Now, Mr. Carr wrote the chapter on the FCC in Project 2025 and what should be done with it, which means that we're going to see a slow and painful dismantling of the body. Really important. He talks a lot about censorship, which, they say censorship, we say responsibility. We say regulation. We say things that are pro-consumer. They say things that sound anti-consumer, which is code for, partisan nonsense. So we can expect there will be no movement on Section 230 in the States, which is the article that says a platform is not liable for the content that sits on it. Platforms are platforms, publishers are publishers, and they're two distinct kinds of entity. In the EU, thanks to the Digital Services Act, we don't recognise that distinction anymore. If it's on your site, you're responsible for it. If it harms other people, you're responsible for it. And that's the way it should be. And hopefully, I mean, there's cases in the US, in the EU against X. There's a case in Australia against X. They will take no guff down there. So we are going to see a completely diametrically opposed vision of how big tech should be allowed to work, for better and ill, because another Trump appointee, his name escapes me at the moment, has said that Ireland has had it too easy for too long over its low corporation tax rate. We're going to slash our corporation tax rate. We want these companies to come home. There's no reason why Microsoft, Apple and Google are over there. Certainly in the size of operation they have. They're only over there for fiscal reasons. We want to bring those jobs back. And if it requires, making things attractive to them in the way that Ireland became attractive way back when, then so be it. Now, I think that's a load of nonsense. I think in order to operate in a territory, you should have a presence in that territory, so perhaps you can actually understand that territory instead of assuming that the rest of the world thinks like America does, because as we know, it does not. And they've just had an election that proves it.
Well, let's move on to other stuff stateside before you explode.
I get very impassioned about these things. I don't know why.
No, do you really? All right, okay. Watching your stocks and shares account then, Niall, you're quite happy with NVIDIA's performance.
I tell you, if you bought stock in NVIDIA 2 years ago...
Oh, man, you'd be minted.
You would be absolutely minted. I mean, their quarterlies are out now. Quarterly revenue of 35 billion. I mean, is NVIDIA the most valuable company in the world at the moment? It's got to be
almost. If it isn't, it is almost, yeah.
Yeah, like their revenue is up 94% on the same time last year. 94%. It's just AI has, it's turned that company on its head. And it's turned it from being, a company for gamers, effectively, gamers and enthusiast builders, to something that touches everyone's lives. Absolutely everyone's. It's like if Canonical overnight captured the PC market. You've got a nice little company working on a well-defined product in Ubuntu. And all of a sudden, overnight, Windows disappears because there's something Ubuntu can do that Windows can't. And everybody wants to be in on Ubuntu. It's that level of, for me, it's that level of turnaround.
Yeah.
I don't know. How's your portfolio looking?
Oh, yeah. Well, my pretend Bitcoin is absolutely rocketing it. I think it's really interesting because when it was coming up to the elections, the thinking was in crypto world that if Kamala Harris gets in, well, then they're not very pro crypto, so the value of crypto is going to go down. If Trump gets in, it'll probably go up because he is more kind of crypto friendly, and the Republican Party in general are more crypto friendly. And then when it became apparent that they had won the Senate and the House and the presidency, so it's like it's been going. I think around the time of the election, just before the election, it was worth something like $65,000 a Bitcoin, and I believe today it's like $95,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's up 30% in a matter of 2 weeks.
Yeah. Now, this could all collapse tomorrow.
Oh, it
if
could.
Trump
Well, there you
decides,
go. Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm not going to invest in Bitcoin. I think our Bitcoin plans were over dramatic, and maybe, seeing as we can't convert it into dollars just yet.
Well, I'm sticking with my. I bought a couple of Bitcoin back in 2013 when I didn't care what they were. I bought a dozen, and now I can't find the USB key. That's my story.
Oh, cheekers! Oh,
last story for this week on the news. Apple TV. Now, I'm very, very surprised at this. Apple TV, like everything that Apple do, it's very, very high quality. How much have they spent on content in the last 5 years?
Apparently, they have spent $20 billion on content.
Wow.
Now, that's
or
TV
one Chrome browser.
Or one Chrome browser. When you think about the level of return. So 20 billion on content, that's, movies, that's TV shows. Now, can you think of any Apple movies?
Oh, God. The one that sticks in my mind is Napoleon. Because it was in the cinema last year, I think it was. And I thought it was dreadful.
Yeah, it was badly reviewed. There was one I saw earlier this year with Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson about the first.
The moon.
Was that what it was called? Fly Me to the Moon or something?
Yeah.
I don't know, something like that. Not great, very forgettable.
Exactly. But very enjoyable though for 2 hours.
2 hours and clearly very well made. Clearly, the director got, I would say, 90% of what they wanted, and it was all up on the screen, and it looked fantastic. But still, not a great story. Didn't really work. Can you think of another one?
I know that Blitz is coming, which Saoirse Ronan is in it. Anything? I do see it from time to time when I can't think of another one offhand.
Yeah, I can think of another one, and only because I haven't seen it, but it sounds really interesting. Coda, which is about a deaf family.
That won the Oscar.
Did
that was
really,
the movie
really well.
of the year. Yeah. Did absolutely well. But
haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it, and I never saw it when it was in the movies, and I haven't seen it since.
Yeah, this is one thing that really gets my goat when it comes to streaming services.
Here we go.
You're getting 2 rants in 1 week. This is not just factual rants, like actually,
rant away, my friend. Go.
My blood is boiling. Streaming services do not know how to market movies. They don't know how to do it. You can have an absolute cracker on Netflix or Apple TV or any of them, and you will find it by accident. There is
or unless somebody told you about it. But I know what you mean. Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any hierarchy of quality whatsoever. I mean, in terms of Netflix, like I can barely find where the new stuff is, and the new stuff is never relevant to me in the first place. It's always 2-star dreck. So streaming services don't know when they have a good thing. They can't market their own stuff that's good. Like Netflix has a brilliant film called Siege of Jadotville, which is about the Jadotville Jacks, which was a siege of a fort that was being manned by Irish soldiers for the UN. It was being attacked by mercenaries. Great film. And a lot of people in Irish public life do not come out of it very well. I felt it was pretty even-handed and quite, okay, I didn't know that. I knew this thing happened, but I didn't know any of the details on it. Great movie, not marketed to people in Ireland. Not good.
One thing I find really, really, really strange about, certainly on Netflix, all right, is that you see a movie and you look at the title and you go, that looks interesting. And then you get this little kind of text that tells you what it's about. And then it just plays a random scene from the movie. And I always think to myself, why can't they just have the darn promo for the movie? I want to sit down. Trailer, 2 minutes. Oh, that looks good. Play. Why can't they do that? And it's kind of like, it's not like they have to make it. You know, all movies come with a trailer. If they could have the trailer, why don't they do that? I find that really, really
absolutely
annoying.
absurd. Like in terms of TV shows, like you've talked to me about a couple of Apple TV shows.
Yep.
Which ones stood out for you? Because I don't have the service, so you've seen. I know one Apple show that I actually quite enjoy watching, but I'm not going to subscribe to Apple TV to get
just
it.
for that. Well, listen, you can Niall. The trick, right, is wait until that series or whatever it's finished. All right, so that all of the series are there on Apple. Okay, you subscribe for a month, less than a tenner. Okay, and then you watch that series, and then you unsubscribe.
Yeah, actually,
there you go. Done. Box set.
That is a point I really want to raise in the era of post-Sopranos prestige television. If a series does not end properly, I'm not buying it, not watching it. I don't care.
Drives me nuts. I get that. It's kind of like I see something that looks interesting, and then I see there's three seasons, and I go, no, I'm not going into that. I like
Netflix are terrible for it.
Yeah. I like something that has a very. Oh, there's one that was on Bad Sisters. Okay, and it's an Irish production, all right. That was very, very good, and it was a great story in that one of the sisters' husbands was, I think, dead, and then all of the other sisters rallying around to try and cover up the death and get rid of the body. All right, so blah 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 or something, whatever. Anyway, it had a very definite end after 8 episodes. It was like, great, love that.
Yeah,
and I picked up the paper the other day. I was looking online the other day and it went Bad Sisters 2. Oh God!
What?
No.
Yeah,
God,
that
no.
happened
And
to
Sharon
me
Horgan. That's who's doing it, and she's a brilliant writer, great actress as well. She's a huge talent. But I kind of like, oh no, the first series was brilliant. It had a really, really good, unique twist and a spin and the whole thing on it. Like, you know, the second series is like, how are they going to change this? I don't know. Like, you know, so no, I'm not. I'm not mad on that. Masters of the Air, I think, is the other one we're watching.
I had that experience with, I'm not going to say the full word of it, the end of the effing world, which had a perfect first season. It was great. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then they brought it back for a second season, and I read the episode summaries. I'm like, this has nothing to do with what I watched previously.
Anyway, listen, we're not doing a movie review show. The news that you had this week about Apple TV Plus was, number one, how much they spent on content, 20 billion, all right? But how many people are watching? How much traffic, all right? This amazed me. Compare Apple TV to Netflix, please.
Yeah, in terms of the number of subscriptions. So we've got Apple pumping out premium quality stuff, as we have, versus Netflix, which is all about low price, mid content, largely in the main. We have 283 million subs for Netflix worldwide. That's fine. Netflix and chill. It's part of the culture. Nobody's going to beat them. So Apple TV, premium stuff. Everything we do is good. Everything we do is exclusive. 25 million.
So
it's not even 10%.
It's not even 10% of Netflix. All right, here's the other stat that you threw at me, and it blew my mind. The amount of traffic, compare the web traffic and whatever it is for Apple and Netflix.
Oh my goodness. Well, is it 10% again? Is Apple 10% of Netflix?
Yeah, no, it was worse than that. It basically, Apple TV traffic for 1 month is about the same as 1 day for Netflix.
Oh my goodness.
Unreal, isn't it?
Like, why would you bother for that amount of money?
I think a lot of these I think Netflix is guilty of it as well, as you say, but it's a quality control problem, all right? Because as you know, I had YouTube. I was subscribing to it maybe about 6 months ago, and I was like, oh my God, YouTube without the ads is a completely different experience. Okay? Completely different experience, all right? But what I found in the 6 months using it since I first subscribed is that I have actually, and I kid you not, become addicted to it, all right? Especially YouTube Shorts, because you're just there on the phone and you're kind of, I've got 10 minutes, I'll just, and you're flipping through stuff, right? And I started kind of going, why am I watching this? I'm not interested in this particular. It's just a title that kind of grabs your attention, and it's kind of like you watch the first 10, 15 seconds and you go, next. And it just goes on. And before you know it, you've spent 2 hours watching the darn thing, So anyway, YouTube very, very kindly decided to increase the subscription from the €17, whatever it was I was paying for it a month, up to €27 a month. So I promptly unsubscribed, and I don't have it anymore. And the funny thing is, I don't really miss it. I don't really miss, because it's the quality problem. I was just watching it because it was literally visual bubblegum. It's just blah, 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 blah. There's nothing on it where you can kind of say, it's not like TV or Netflix where you can say, oh, there was a particular movie franchise, or there's a particular box set that I really love to see. And it's nothing like that. It's just all sporadic. And even though the quality is getting better, no, quality. That's the quality control were the two words that I had in my head when I unsubscribed. So anyway, right. I think that's enough of the news for 1 week, don't you?
I think so.
Thanks for keeping us up to date now.
This is Tech Radio.
We have a very special Tech Central announcement to make on the podcast this week, and this is to tell you about the first Tech Central webinar, which is taking place next week on Wednesday, the 27th of November. Going to be taking a look at regulatory compliance in 2024. We've guests from Integrity 360, eMagine, and the Institute of Directors giving you the latest and how it might affect IT and IT professionals. If that's your area and words like DORA and NIS2 make your skin crawl, then this is definitely for you. You can register for it right now for free at webinar.techcentral.ie. And of course, that link is in the description area of your podcast app right now.
From TechCentral.ie, this is the award-nominated Tech Radio from TechCentral.ie.
When it comes to driving, we all think two things. Number one, I'm the best driver on the road. And number two, I'm paying way too much for my car insurance. What can tech and specifically AI do to lower those pricey premiums? Gary McClarty, Director of MCL Insurance, has some great ideas on this and shared them during the week with Niall Kitson.
Gary, when we talk about the insurance industry, inevitably things come down to people's frustrations with how premiums are sort of calculated or assessed. As somebody working in the insurance field, is this something you also feel as well, that there are processes in place, but it can be quite difficult to either show them or indeed make them palatable to a market?
Well, I mean, as you know, the insurance industry and setting premiums is quite a complex process. The premium itself is made up of many different factors. It's made up of the commission that might be paid to brokers. It's made up of the claims inflation. The reinsurance is also a very big element of that as well. So, for instance, an insurance company may take up to say £1 million worth of a claim, and then after that, it's reinsurance. And reinsurance is something which is passed on across the world. It's a global phenomenon. So if we see storms in America, as we've seen recently, there's only a certain number of reinsurers in the world, and that becomes a big part of the premium as well, and that will be passed on to consumers. But at a more local level, it is driven by claims. People have seen there's definitely been a big fall in insurance premiums since the peak in about 2016, 2017. We've seen our premiums fall at least 25 to 30% in that intervening period. And people say, I think the only thing the insurers can maybe feed back to people is the profitability of the account. And we know up until 2016, 17, until there were reforms in personal injury, that the insurers were not really making much money on motor insurance. It was more or less a marginal business with 1% to 2% profit at best. It's not a business. There's always been people saying if it's a cartel, and if it wasn't a cartel, it's not a particularly effective one, if that's the case, because nobody was really making lots of money.
So in looking then at sort of things that annoy people, specifically when it comes to motor insurance, people very often feel aggrieved that, look, I'm a very responsible driver, I'm a very good driver, I've got a no claims bonus. Why isn't sort of my premium being sort of reduced to match the sort of competency of my driving? And this is kind of a problem you've taken on.
Yeah, we have taken it on. Traditional insurance is, actuaries will look at the traditional factors that we know, such as maybe your age, the sort of car you're driving, where you live, what's your occupation. and a no claims bonus. So there's lots of factors which they would have used traditionally. Now, what we're doing is, especially for the first time drivers who've just passed their test, we're using the technology from telematics to fit a box to the vehicle. So that then is a lot different from the static factors which we would currently use, in that we're using real-time information about how people actually drive then to rate them. So that's an individual footprint. And there's, as you know, there'll be millions and millions of connotations of how people drive. What we then do is feed back a score to the driver. So the better they drive, the higher the score, and the lower their insurance premiums.
So people will actually get that feedback that, okay, I have my end plate, I've passed a certain level of competency. But if, say, somebody is making a recurring error or something like that, they will get that ongoing feedback. Yes.
We would be one of probably the only unique telematics providers in the market that actually gets the claims information as well. Because we have a relationship with Axon, we get the driving data. So we get those things like acceleration, cornering, braking, the time of day that you drive, the day of the week, the sort of roads that you're driving on. So we can build up a picture there in terms of how you're driving effectively. And we have 675 million kilometers of information on that. But then what we've also got is we've all of the accidents. So if somebody has an accident, we get all of those details. The telematics device will give us the G-force, for instance, of the accident, how severe the accident has been. And we can see what direction the vehicle was traveling in, what sort of road the vehicle was, had the crash, what time of the day the crash occurred. And then we can overlay that then with the insurance information. So we can then see exactly how much that accident actually cost. So was it a small scrape? Was it somebody curbed the vehicle, for instance, or was it a serious accident that cost the insurer hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds? So we can then overlay that and then feed all that information back into the algorithm. So we can then see the number of events, for instance, that would somebody who is potentially going to have an accident would flag in terms of those major factors such as acceleration. And then we can compare that against people who don't have accidents. And you can see a distinct difference in terms of the lines and the graphs. So we can then feed that back to the driver and try and hopefully encourage them to drive safer and, as a result, not have an accident.
It's quite an impressive level of data that you're collecting there. What was the process in deciding what factors you would decide to look at?
Well, I mean, telematics has been done across the UK for quite a while. It's about 10% of the market there. Some of the European countries, it's even more than that again. And really, when you look at driving, it really does boil down to the factors that we're looking at. It is the major, when you drive the car, for instance. So, well, first of all, I think it's where you drive the car. So what sort of road are you driving it on? What time of the day are you driving, and what time are you driving, for instance. So we know a lot of accidents might happen. Serious accidents might happen in the evening, but we know that there might be more accidents during rush hour, for instance. But because there's more vehicles on the road, there's not as much speed in that case. So the accident may not be as severe, for instance. So once we've now looked at, well, where you drive, the next thing would be to look at, well, how do you drive? So you could have a very bad profile that you're driving, for instance, on secondary roads all the time. You're driving, in the hours of darkness. So to start with, you would say, well, that's a pretty risky profile in terms of where the severe accidents are. But then you might overlay that, or you would overlay that with how you're actually driving. So if we're then looking at your acceleration, your speeding, your braking, and then it would come back and say, yeah, you're driving a risky profile in terms of where you drive, but the way you drive and how you drive is actually very safe. So you're actually going to be less likely to have an accident. But it works also conversely, where somebody could be driving on motorways, A roads, and we know that they're safe roads with less accidents, and they're driving maybe at more, what would you say, middle of the afternoon, for instance, or early afternoon when there's not as many vehicles on the road. But then that person could have a really risky profile. They speed, their cornering's not good, their braking's late, which might show very poor awareness. And then they're more likely to have an accident, even though where they drive is safe. So it's putting all of those factors together, and it comes up with a score.
So who exactly will be, might decide that this is something they're interested in? I mean, there's the eternal discussion over, okay, I'm generating all this data. Who owns it? How is it protected? So who do you think would be, either required to use a device like this, or perhaps just interested in using one?
Well, we see there's two markets for it. At the minute, we are targeting those first-time and novice drivers, because that is where traditionally the highest accident rate has been. Especially if we look at novice drivers or inexperienced drivers don't just have to be younger drivers. Of course, people can pass the driving test at any age. But when you look at the accident rate for drivers traditionally in that sector, it is much higher than it would be for the population as a whole. So that would be the major. If you look at drivers maybe between 17 and 25, as a percentage of the population in terms of their age group versus the percentage of crashes that they have, it's well out of sync. It's probably 3 times the size of the population. And the other issue with it is it tends to be quite fatal accidents, in that they might have their friends in the car. We've seen that many times in Ireland over the last number of months with the terrible accidents that we've had this year, that when there is a fatality on country roads, it doesn't tend to be one person. There can be 3 or 4 people in the vehicle as well. So that does tend to be the younger drivers, and that's where we have targeted. Like when we started, that cohort of drivers was about 13% of those drivers were having accidents, and that figure is now down to about 4.5%. So it's a 67% reduction in crashes because we've been using this technology.
Is there a sense of, granted, getting that feedback, but also a sense that, okay, Big Brother is watching, that what you're doing now could potentially have implications down the line in terms of what you're actually paying, or might affect your pocket as well as your skill set?
Well, I think the thing about this is it's a win-win situation. You've got a device in the car. We're not. It's there for insurance purposes and insurance purposes only, and to try and feedback how you drive, so that we do know it's very difficult for younger drivers to get, or first-time drivers to get insurance. So this is a way that they can get insurance by monitoring them. So it is a win-win situation. The data itself is anonymized. It's never, if somebody breaks a speed limit, for instance, we're all human. We all know that people can inadvertently drive into a speed limit and not pay attention. So nobody's going to get, none of the information will be passed on to the authorities, for instance, because the GDPR rules, it's all ring-fenced. So there's none of that. And the world we live in today, everybody's got a phone in their pocket, might have location services on. So I think we're living in a world where people, they are tracked in many, many different ways. And I don't think I think it's there for the greater good. And as I say, the data has not been sold. It's not been given to authorities. It's just really used for insurance purposes, and that's it.
So right now you're looking at new drivers, looking at younger drivers. Do you think there would be applications for older drivers, maybe drivers that have been put off the road for a while? Just any sort of way to provide that feedback to insurers and maybe regain a little bit of trust that would have been lost?
Yeah, we see, I think I alluded to you there, but the younger drivers is the first one, but there is potentially 2 other markets. The first one being maybe the more distressed risks, where people have got terrible accident history. They might have had maybe drink driving convictions, a whole different convictions. So there's maybe a market for it there, where they find it hard to get insurance because of a previous very poor driving history. So that's a potential. The second one would be for those people who are maybe not driving as much, and this is something that our 2 brands, it's Women and Get Set Go, are looking into, is to develop a new pay-as-you-go insurance product that we would like to launch maybe the second half of next year. So people would then only use the telematics, but they'd only be using it in a way that they'd be paying for the insurance for the number of miles that they drive. So if you're somebody's only driving a couple of thousand miles a year, even 5,000 miles a year, or your car's off the road for a month, you would only be charged for the number of miles that you physically drive your vehicle.
And that was Jerry McClarty from MCL Insurance, who you can find online at mclinsurance.ie.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some of the stories that we have online that we couldn't squeeze into the podcast, including...
Yeah, we've got what Lero and EI Electronics are doing in tech-enabled care in Ireland, why password spray attacks aren't going anywhere anytime soon, and of course we've got more on next Wednesday's Tech Central webinar for IT professionals, where we are looking at the impact of DORA and NIS2.
Excellent. You'll find those and more online at techcentral.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and on RTE Radio 1 Extra, of course. In the meantime, do remember to share a podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, or now also on YouTube. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, as always, thanks for listening. Take care.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.